Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the November Worldview Academy Café, the last one for the year. I'm going to start sharing my screen now and just take you through the intro. Today we'll be talking about management in the age of AI. I was saying to Craig and Richard earlier this morning, I'm now at the point where I think I've over-prepared for today, so I feel like everything I want to share with you, you all already know, and it's old news. So I hope it isn't. I hope I've managed to synthesize some of the new thinking into something that's interesting, and that will lead us to have interesting conversations in today's session. So why this topic? Well, why not this topic? It's so big at the moment. Everywhere you read, everywhere you look, every article you open, it doesn't even have to be somebody that's in the OD space or in the leadership development or in the HR or in the people space. Everywhere you read about, we need to be more adaptable. It's complexity this and complexity that. And it's become adaptability over certainty. It's become curiosity over control. AI is taking over the predictable technical work and leaving some of the human work for the managers, and we'll talk about that in more detail today. Managers suddenly has to balance efficiency with empathy more than ever before. They have to navigate hybrid environments, tech-augmented workplaces, etc. So it's very obvious that the work of being a manager has fundamentally changed in the past few years. And that AI has shifted the context and not just the tools. So something that's very important in this discussion today that I want to just bring to the forefront now is we're not actually talking about managers becoming experts in AI. It's not about the managers and the leaders suddenly being coders and being able to work with the agents in a way that is at an expert level. It's about shaping what the tool enables. So it's about working with the tool alongside the tools. I've been listening to the podcast, the AI-driven leader, and if you want to follow one person that does very, very interesting work in the AI leadership space, it's Jeff Woods. It's Jeff with a Geoff Woods. And he has published a book called The AI-Driven Leader. And there's also a very interesting podcast out at the moment. And he talks about that a lot, about AI-driven leaders doesn't have to be experts in AI, but they need to know how to lead with AI. So they need to know how to work with it. And it's also not about which tools we're using. It's not about, is it ChatGPT or is it Copilot or is it this or is it that? He uses the example in one of his talks that if you give Picasso a paintbrush and if you give him a paintbrush, the outcome will be completely different. And how that is true for different people using different AI tools, prompting in a different way, etc. So the question is not what are the tools that we're using. It is what is the skills that managers need now. So how must leadership respond and how must leadership development respond? And that's what we're going to look at today. And as always, our cafe is going to kick off with a check-in question. We're going to put you into breakaway rooms and you're going to have a conversation. I'll put the question on the screen just now. Then we'll come back. We'll take some light feedback from what came up in your rooms. Then I've got a small short presentation that I'd like to share with you, just some of the research and what I found and how we think we need to synthesize this to figure out what is new in management and leadership and how can we, as OD and as leadership practitioners, what do we need to do differently? What needs to change in the programs, in the way we develop leaders? What are the new skills and capabilities and capacities that we need to develop? There's then going to be another conversation, so another breakout room for you where you're going to have an opportunity to chat again, and then we'll take some feedback and hopefully we'll have some time then to play around with that feedback and to make sense of it. So the question for today is, please introduce yourselves when you get to your breakout rooms, and then talk about what have you noticed that changed most in how managers lead or how managers should lead. or what is asked of them in the last 2 to 3 years. Now we're focusing on 2 to 3 years because ChatGPT was launched in November 3 years ago. So the real AI impact on workplaces and on everyday employees and leaders have really started when ChatGPT has come to the forefront. So we want to think about the last 2 to 3 years. We are in no way saying that, for example, when COVID landed, that didn't bring extra complexity and we had to be more adaptable and that kind of thing. But we're talking about the age of AI. So I'm going to start setting up the breakaway rooms. It's probably going to take me a minute or so. In the meantime, think about your answer and I will open the breakout rooms in a second. All right, I'm going to open the breakout rooms. For those that's just joined us, that came in late, this is the question we're going to discuss. Please introduce yourselves. There's 3 people per room at the moment, and talked about what have you noticed that has changed since the launch of ChatGPT in terms of management and leadership. What should have changed, what is changing, what is it that they're struggling with. And you're going to have 10 minutes in your rooms. So there you go. You should have the invitation on your screen. All right, let's get some quick feedback. We're not going to take very long for the feedback because we are going to have another conversation, and I want to bring some information into the cafe for this morning. So Bill, Louise, Richard, and Vivian joined a little bit late. Just a quick recap of what it is that you discussed in your room.
So, Liesl, we did what people in the world of AI need to do. We connected as human beings.
Okay.
We didn't spend too much time talking about. We talked a little bit about Bill's business and the training functions. We talked a little bit about people using AI. But what we needed to do was to connect as human beings. So, sorry.
All right. That's if that's what you needed to do, then I'm glad that we gave you the space. Room 2, Arlene, Craig, and Samuel.
Yeah, Arlene's invisible, and I'm not sure if she can hear us or not. But Samuel was eloquent.
So the 2 of us also caught up a little bit, and interesting things that Craig shared from his perspective. And I think the one thing, and it also said he doesn't know whether it's AI, but the whole thing about collapsing of management and people managers being exposed to exactly the same change as their people, and they're not really able to guide their people through the change because they're exposed to it at the same time. So I don't know if that's gives a good indication what you said, Craig. From my own perspective, apart from Copilot being used and people saying I'm using it, and see a few things that you can really identify the font and the style hasn't been changed from what is out of there's not a lot of evidence that I'm picking up that it's being used, and in quite a technical company, very little evidence of data, because we've got vast amount of data, and the promise of making data more accessible to managers and human beings, not a lot of evidence yet, although I think there's some efforts on the go.
I can add to that, because building on Samuel's observation that he's not seeing. We're both seeing AI coming into process improvement. So, but that's part of a, decades or centuries long tradition of processes always being improved. Whatever the latest tech is, we'll try and improve a process. But managers using AI in managerial decision making, and I've been more and more aggressively prompting delegates to use AI to access knowledge, which is Samuel's point. You've got massive amounts of data inside an organization like Sassel. AI can get through that stuff really quickly and should support at least the knowledge piece of decision making. So I prompt delegates to do things like, your Enneagram, your team's Enneagram, and you've got a strategic decision to make. A lot of information about Enneagrams and personalities is available. So construct a good question and say, I'm an Enneagram tri-type this, and my team looks like that. How would I land this thing? People are not doing that. So they rely on this, and it would help them. In my opinion, it would help them make a better decision quickly, very quickly. But they just rely on patterned, their own patterned ways of responding in situations. And they're not, even in that very, very simple example, using AI to enrich a decision or a relationship or prepare for a meeting or anything like that. So maybe AI hasn't found its way into managerial work. And I agree with Louise. In the end, it's all relational and behavioral. But jeepers, spending 15 minutes preparing is always been good advice. And now that 15 minutes can be really enriched. And maybe people are not making that transition.
Thank you, Craig and Samuel. Room 3, Cindy, Sindiswa, and Teliso. What did you guys discuss?
So as we came back into the room, it was a quick, Cindy, will you please? So, Craig, thank you for that, because that was quite a, I've written some notes around that, because that is something we experienced. But in our room, we had vast degrees of, there hasn't been much change in the how people manage and how AI plays into that role. From leaders to change to OD. And then the other side of that coin was the fear in leaders of how this is going to take away jobs, that type of thing. A lot of the experience around that we discussed around was that there's varying degrees according to age groups as well, with regards to specific leaders doing specific things. I was just saying, I was in a session yesterday where it was an AI session where they had a panel of speakers from cybersecurity through to solution architects, and then managers, and then the top tier leaders. And it was a discussion around how do we go from being courageous in AI to being connected in AI. And it was an interesting conversation. In my world, I've experienced it a lot. We use a lot of the AI environments to pull data, where there's trends that are happening. How do we use that? So the security side of it is playing a bigger role, because we put in a lot of information into these tools. How do we ensure from a security point of view that the data we're getting back is right and it's valid? So the solution architect yesterday was quite interesting, because he's got a tool that you can actually check the coding. So far more technical than I could ever be. But he was saying he was checking the coding talk to ensure that is giving the right level of information. So we varied across from not much change in how management is being experienced and how AI is into fear, and then the total opposite of deep dive in the information.
Cool. Thank you so much, Cindy. All right, I'm going to share my short presentation with you now, and then we'll go back into conversations. And And basically what we're going to look at is three things. We're going to start with the context has shifted. So for managers and leaders, the world which they are leading in and managing in has shifted. Things have changed. So AI is an environment shaper. And it reshapes the pace, the volume, the complexity, the data. We just talked about the data quite a bit. Decision cycles are different. Expectations are different. And this is all being reshaped. The context is being reshaped by AI, which means that managers must lead in a world where information is now abundant, but clarity is not as abundant. And we'll talk a little bit more about how much information, and I think it's started coming up in the conversation now, is available and at people's finger points. I attended a workshop 2 weeks or so ago where they were talking about recruitment in currently, and what they were saying is degrees and what you've studied is going to become less and less and less important because knowledge is so easy to get, and the technical skills are becoming less important because you can quickly ask your chat companion to help you figure things out. So there's a lot of that happening, and the world that the managers must lead in is different. So how the work is done is changing, or is about to change if it hasn't changed, or will change at some point. And therefore how people must be led is changing. So thinking about this, I've started getting a little bit tired of everything you read and see being, we have to be more adaptable, more agile, our leaders have to learn how to make decisions in complexity, blah, 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 blah. And it's quite abstract the way we're talking about we need to teach our leaders to be more adaptable. How do you? Why do you? What is it that they used to do differently from what they're doing now that has changed? So what is it that they need to use, need to learn, and need to get good at? So I've created a table with 10 things that I think is before AI or more years ago than COVID maybe, how things worked and how it's working now. And I want to just share that with you. And to say that I'm not saying that this started 3 years ago when ChatGPT was launched. This is the world becoming more complex. And just a few thoughts around that. So let's say before AI, before the world has become as complex as it has, managers needed to do a lot of information gathering. Now that information is abundant, but it's messy and it's conflicting. So what has become more important for leaders and for managers is that they have to sense make. So they have to learn how to interrogate data. They have to learn to scan for patterns. They have to build shared understanding. They have to know how do we reframe problems. They know when to decide when to explore. And this whole sense-making thing is becoming more and more important in different ways in how information is thrown at us and how it's used. Following processes used to be a more normal kind of thing. We know how the work is supposed to get done and what everybody's supposed to do, where it's becoming more about adapting to processes now, and it's adapting in real time. Where problem solving in uncertainty especially has become more important, and not waiting for clarity has become important. Korn Ferry talks about one of their top 5 skills for leaders in the current world is critical thinking. And they talk about critical thinking in terms of 5 aspects. They say that critical thinking needs to be strategic, tactical, analytical, innovative, and then they talk about implicative thinking. And implicative thinking for them is a decision-making model almost, where leaders compare multiple outcomes all the way. And the critical thinking, the problem solving in uncertainty, then becomes switching between tactical and strategical and analytical, etc., to connect the dots. Connecting the dots has become important. Not looking for data points as much, but seeing insights around connecting everything. Then communication is changing, where communication used to be more of a sort of a one-size-fits-all. If we just think of the high-level example of, let's say, before COVID, everybody came to the office. We were there from 8 to 5. We kind of talked around the water cooler. We had a lunch hour. The information and instructions and stuff were given in a different way. Now managers are leading hybrid teams. It's distributed. It's multimodal. Things are different. So precision communication has become different. Has become more important. And what we mean with that is tailored communication, tailored for the audience. So when we talk about communication, we talk about communication in real time. There's not that much time to prepare communication anymore. It has to happen in the flow of work. It has to happen in multiple mediums. A manager might be making a comment on Teams over here. They might be commenting on a document over there. They might have a quick conversation, grabbing a coffee. They might have a feedback conversation with somebody 5 minutes later. And all these modes of communication needs to still have clear articulation. And it needs to be tailored for the audience. And it comes up quite a lot in the research I've done in the different podcasts and webinars and everything that I've attended. Then monitoring work, and this is also something that I see everywhere. Supervision has become coaching. So where managers' role was very much monitoring, supervising, it's now done a lot more automatically. Tools are doing a lot of the monitoring and supervising. And coaching is becoming more important. So it's actually almost helping people to use the tools well. Whether it is ChatGPT or whether it is a new tool that is being used in the HR department for specific things, it's helping people use the tools better. Then keeping the pace steady is not something that we can really do very much anymore. The work cycles are faster, everything is more disrupted. So leaders need to be better at prioritization. Replanning needs to be done all the time. Working with ambiguity is coming up over and over and over again. Removing blockers used to be more important, where now blockers are more systemic, especially cross-functional in organizations. And the role of the manager then becomes collaborating across boundaries and influencing without necessarily having the authority to influence. And when we talk about collaboration, Korn Ferry talks about we have to embrace a mindset of we before I in terms of collaboration. And for us to collaborate, we need psychological safety. So that is also something that obviously comes up everywhere, psychological safety becoming more important. Then being the expert that leaders and managers needs to let go of this idea. The tools are providing a lot of the expertise now. And what they need is judgment, ethical decision making, asking better questions, etc. I listened to Louise. Thank you for the prompt to go and check out the HR Leaders podcast. I did quite a few of the short episodes, very interesting. And the one that I came across was with Josh Bershin. And he says one of the most important things at the moment is, can we get rid of the imposter syndrome? Can we stop thinking, I don't know enough, I don't know how to use it, I don't know yet? Because what he's saying is everybody is learning. And we need to shift to this mindset that we're all learning. Nobody knows yet. Even if you use AI or ChatGPT in your everyday work already, you're still not the expert. So let go of this imposter mindset, let go of trying to be the expert. And the ethical decision making is becoming more and more and more and more important. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later more in terms of a specific article that I came across. But ethical decision making is something that AI would probably not be able to ever do. It's always going to be the human thing. Then delegating tasks has become more about delegating outcomes and about experimentation. And there's a lot of talk not only about psychological safety, but psychological permission. So give permission to ask questions, give permission to make mistakes. Set the guardrails within which we can experiment and try new things, and empower people to do that. And sometimes, I think a lot, not only in this specific point, but everywhere, having a psychologically safety culture, and having the permission to make mistakes and the permission to ask questions. The psychological permission is a lot about the culture of the organization. Raj Verma, he's the Chief Culture, Inclusion and Employee Experience Officer at Sanofi Pharmaceuticals. And I had a really nice talk with him on the same podcast. And he says, culture is not a vibe, it's a verb. And that people need to understand that, and to understand that if you don't shape the culture, you will still have a culture, you might just not like it. So it's very important at the moment to shape this culture that will take us forward and that will enable people to thrive in this world. Performance reviews has gone from something that was a quarterly and yearly thing with lots of time to prepare for it, gone into real-time development, feedback loops. It's becoming everyday conversations. Things are changing too fast to have a quarterly meeting or a yearly meeting. So it's more about micro-feedback, having difficult conversations. And then managing change events. This whole thing about events is changing a lot into being something constant. So there isn't that many events anymore. It's more about the constant change, and it's more about navigating this change. Amy Coleman, who is the Chief People Officer at Microsoft, she says the idea that a transformation starts and ends is over. It doesn't. And uncertainty is never ending at this stage in the world. And the answer to uncertainty is not certainty. The answer to uncertainty is leaning in. It is proximity. It is really human in the sense of, I don't know either, and let's learn together. So the change isn't ending. There's very few change events left. They are still there, but in terms of management's role, it's more about navigating than managing an event. And then obviously the emotional literacy in terms of change, because if we're constantly going through change, we're also constantly going through all the emotions that comes with change. And managers need to understand this and need to be able to navigate these emotions. All right, and then what didn't change so much, but what is absolutely amplified is the humanity of leadership. And the human connection, as we said, psychological safety came up already, sense-making, meaning-making, ethical judgment, and the courage, the boundaries that we need. So if AI can help us with work, with decisions, with tasks, with communication, it cannot build trust. It cannot mend relationships. It cannot give purpose. It cannot create belonging. And it cannot coach somebody through self-doubt. So in terms of leadership is a relational act. I cannot relate. And that will not change in the near future. I don't know if it will eventually. If you have a look at there at the bottom, I've made a note of an article that I came across yesterday. So there was a post published yesterday of a lady, she's a leadership coach, and she was looking for evidence that the humanness is still there and that kind of thing. And then she came across this article and referenced it. It's published in the Journal of Leadership and Organizational Studies in June 2023. That's a year and a half ago. Now, in the speed that AI has been growing and taking over our lives, a year and a half ago is quite long ago. But it's a very academic article with a lot of research and a lot of people that I admire being quoted in that research. And they actually argue that the computers, the machines will take over humans in terms of management and leadership. And what will be left over is a few senior leaders, human leaders, who are managing the machines, who are managing the people. But the one thing that they say, and I can't believe this is a year and a half ago, but the one thing that they say that AI will never be able to do is make ethical judgments. And that's the one thing that will always remain human. So there's an interesting article to go and have a look at if you want to, because they argue completely in the different direction. But I went and read it because I was like, wow. But yeah, so very logically, and they have quite a a few good arguments in there about how the algorithms will develop and even get things like the dynamics in teams, etc., etc. So again, what we're saying is AI is brilliant at summarizing stuff, at cleaning up our posts before we post it on LinkedIn, on helping us write emails, on analyzing, on generating options for us. But it doesn't read the context. It doesn't read the culture. It doesn't know the history of the team, what we've been through. It doesn't understand the interpersonal dynamics, not yet anyway. It doesn't sense fatigue. It doesn't sense when people are burnt out. And those things will stay human. And again, I say for now. I believe it will stay human, but who knows for how long. AI can amplify complexity. And again, like I said earlier, people use different tools. And people put different prompts in those tools. And the information that comes out is often very different. So the answers are different, the levels of comfort might be different, and people might be moving at different speeds of adoption. So this is where leaders come in to integrate, to anchor the team, to create that psychological permission that we said we needed, to create coherence. Teams will always need a shared understanding in order to act. Teams will need to agree on their purpose in order to know what they're supposed to do. And for them to do that, if the AI gives us individualized outputs and different tools gives us different answers, then leaders must bring that coherence back into the team. They must create shared meaning, they must align direction, and they must establish the guardrails that we need. And then, of course, there's the thing that came up when I think Cindy was giving her feedback that is a very obvious part of what's happening in the world at the moment. As people are worried about their relevance. AI is taking over some jobs. It really is. Or something that used to take me all week now takes me a few hours to do. What am I supposed to do with the rest of the time? Josh Bershon actually says it's empowering because you can do more and you can add more value. But I think for a lot of people, it's also, why am I still here if a machine can do my job in a few hours? So there's a fear of being left behind. There's a fear about, does my skills still matter? There's the pressure to keep up. And that's, again, where leaders come in, to reassure, to see the emotional cues, to reinforce people's worth, and to help people feel valued. Right, so a lot of the and then of course the ethical thing. Decide what is the ethical judgment, what is the right decision to take here. All right, and then leadership as a practice. So we've been preaching this for a very long time, and Louise, I cannot see 70-20-10 without thinking about you. We talk about evangelizing stuff. So we believe this has always been important, but it's becoming more and more important. I think it's going to become, people are going to be sent on MBAs at business schools and individual leadership programs less and less because it's going to work less. Because you pluck them out of that context, you pluck them out of the workplace, and you try and put them in a classroom and you try and teach them a bunch of theory and stuff that how do I apply this? Doesn't happen. So we believe it's becoming practice over theory even more than it always was. That the 70-20-10 model is amplified even more. And that learning is happening in microseconds, in micro tasks, every single day, and that needs to happen in the workplace. And learning happens through reflection, adjusting, iterating, looking for feedback, asking for feedback, experimenting, and not sitting somewhere and learning new theory and new models, especially not stagnant models. All right, so to take all of this together, I've positioned 3 stories here. The first one is the context has shifted. The work of managers has shifted in terms of different pace, different complexity, different expectations, information overload. The environment is different. Then secondly, I'm saying that human leadership matters more, not less. And this is a continuance continuing from the old way of looking at leadership, but I think it's been dumbed down a lot and it's now becoming more important. And it's becoming obvious that it's more important. So emotional intelligence is back in the forefront, having real conversations, sense making, trust. And then leadership as a practice is more important than before. It's experience-based, it's integrated, and it's iterative. So what does this mean for leaders, and what does this mean for leadership development? This means if the shift hasn't been made, the shift needs to be made from building competence to building capacity. And the shifts are then needed in terms of not what leaders must know, but what they must be capable of navigating. So as we said, change is continuing, it's never ending, there's ambiguity, the emotions have to be managed. The complexity and the pressure of everything is more a capacity building than knowing theory. Content is shifting to sense making, so helping leaders interpret, helping leaders prioritize information, decide, connecting the dots instead of looking for data points, not necessarily giving them more models and frameworks. I will never say models are not useful, but I don't think what we need at the moment is more static models and frameworks. I think it's to apply that. Moving from individual skills to more of a relational capability, where AI does a lot of the tasks and leaders do the humanness side of it. So trust, clarity, boundaries, belonging, and having the conversations that matter. It's moving from events to embedded practice, so learning that happens in the work, through deliberate practice, through reflection loops, through real conversations, and not in isolated training days. And then leaders as experts is ending, and leaders needs to become catalysts. So we've talked about coaching, enabling people, asking better questions, always staying curious. It's coming up a lot, the curious mindset, helping people create meaning, helping people create direction, and absolutely not being the smartest person in the room. Mm-hmm. All right, so that is what I wanted to share with you in terms of what I've come up with, listening to podcasts, attending webinars, reading a lot, and scratching as deep as I could to try and just synthesize this into what does this mean for leadership development. So we're going to go back into our breakaway rooms now, and I want you to have a chat about what you've just heard. So if we're saying that leadership development needs to focus less on competencies, more on building capacity, more on sense-making, connection, and adaptability, and real work and practice, how does this land for you? And if you agree, if you don't agree, why not? And if you agree, or what is it that you might agree with some and some of the stuff not, or you might say we're not there yet. But if you agree, what might need to shift in how leadership development works in your organization or in your work or in your world? So if you are a ID practitioner and you actually facilitate leadership development, or you develop leadership programs, what do you think needs to change there? Or if you're in an organization where leadership development is being applied and offered, what needs to shift? All right, I'm going to open the breakaway rooms again. The same ones as before. I hope everybody's still here. I have an idea. We've got one or two more people, but I'll see as soon as I open them. And where are we in terms of time? Okay, you're going to have 12 minutes for your discussion.
Thank you. I just want to say to the team that I was with, thank you so much. That was great sharing.
Okay, Cindy, why don't you kick us off?
No, it's not my turn. It's not my turn. It's
not your turn. Okay, well, yeah, somebody from your group. Why don't you kick us off with your feedback?
I don't know if we stuck to the script, but where we landed is yes. We have seen through the evolution of the world of work how focus has always been improving the enterprise. Where has the question, how do we support human beings and human capacity to keep pace, to be able to keep evolving the world of work. We feel we have not seen that focus. It's been about the enterprise, but not the humans who are required to run, build, and support these enterprises. And yes, we acknowledge the decision makers who are concerned about the enterprise have been humans. We fully acknowledge that. So a question that we kind of ended our conversation on is, it's great that we are asking this question now. And we are thinking about what is the impact of AI? How is it impacting not just roles and jobs, but the functions that will continue to exist and be necessary? But where are these conversations happening in industries? Because this is what we do need to be talking about. Where is this happening in our education system? If we are preparing graduates for the future world of work, are we ensuring that doctors are learning about entrepreneurship because they're going to need to run their own practices? Or even there, are we just churning out kind of technical MBCHB graduates? How are we gearing the world up for a world with AI? So we kind of went rogue in our conversation, sorry. But yes, we do agree that the role of leaders, of managers, has shifted.
Great, thank you, Sindiswa. Cindy or Talisa, do you want to add anything?
No, Sindiswa did a very good job. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So let's go work backwards. Then Samuel, Craig, and Arlene's group.
We got quite philosophical. I don't think that would be a surprise. And Craig, maybe you must summarize what we spoke about.
Cheers. So we better milk in there. Sorry, apologies.
I'll have mine black, Bill. Yeah, Samuel, I'll try. So I suppose neuroscience. Our starting point was our limited prefrontal cortex kind of bandwidth as human beings. And as managers, we get, we know the hurly-burly of managerial life. It's not like managers just have oceans of time to prepare for things. Things are thrown at them all through the day. So the manager's rushing from one meeting to another, one report to another, one crisis. And that's got to be putting the prefrontal cortex under pressure. Then suddenly, you have an important moment or an important meeting. And I know that I've often looked back after some of those meetings and thought to myself, if only I had remembered. If only I'd remembered what was important to Sindiswa, or if only I'd remembered what was important to me. I mean, I might have that morning journaled how much I wanted to be in a certain way that day. And I didn't remember. And AI helps us tremendously with that. But then we got on to touched on the psychological safety thing. If I just go to the AI and I ask it a direct question without clarity, without context, I can get an answer that could come from any field of knowledge anywhere in the world. So we all know that. So how do I build psychological safety between me and my AI? How do I feel safe enough to tell the AI exactly who I am, as revealing as I am with my journal? What do I believe in? What is important to me? And then constrain the AI within that value set. And more broadly, maybe there are specific OD models, there are specific that over 30 years I've come to believe are true and useful. And I constrain my AI with that too. This is me. These are some of the things I believe in. And then say, recall the conversation I had with Bill from a year ago. Now in this moment, help me remember who I wanted to be and what I wanted to achieve. And there, AI is brilliant, because in a microsecond, it can say, right, Craig, I know who you are, and I know Bill, and this is what you guys wanted to achieve. Yes, then I can move on to still be human, interpret that any way I want. But that microsecond before, AI's ability to make salient and to surface all of that thinking stuff that I might have done over decades and bring it back to me now. I don't think we're exploiting that well enough.
Cool.
And I think that's what we talked about.
So I want to
go for it, Louise.
So I'm in a place with not fabulous technology. Can you hear me, Liesel?
Yeah, you're back now. You went dark for a second, but you seem okay.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, no, I'm breaking up. I won't irritate you.
Your audio seems good, Louise, but your video is jumpy.
Maybe just switch the video off and we can hear the audio.
Yeah, there's a slight delay in what Louise
says. So Craig, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Louise.
Just talk, Louise. We hear you well once you start talking. Just don't stop.
Okay. So I think Craig, you've got a point there around, if we're going to work with these machines as our if we're going to truly collaborate with them, we have to develop that sense of comfort. Now, I'm speaking from someone who Chat is my very best friend at the moment. My husband's very jealous because I speak to Chat rather than my husband about many things now. And Chat doesn't, my husband doesn't like that Chat's having fun with me. So, but what I think there's that comfort level, there's that kind of how does this man-machine collaboration work? That's one part of the story. There's another part of the story that says, and we are always going to work with other warm-blooded human beings who need us to respond, just to be conscious of how we respond in the moment. Not, are we saying the right things? What are we doing? Our being and how our being is influencing our doing. And that's, Liesel, your point around, I think the 70-20-10 is that we don't learn that stuff. We don't learn how to be or to be conscious we learn that in a workshop. We learn it from being in the room and having a difficult conversation and messing up and learning from messing up. And those are the skills that most managers and leaders have no idea how to, they're figuring it out together. And I think that's the frontier, is the in the moment learning that happens when things go wrong, when things go well, when we, piss each other. Someone said two people said to each other yesterday, "You piss me off." And I thought, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're having a real conversation. Okay, sorry.
No, that's fine. We got that. Thank you, Louise. Is there anybody else in the in that room? Bill, would you like to share anything that came up in your conversation?
Yeah, sure. We were, I think, it's a wee bit more basic, not as philosophical as Craig's group. We were talking about using AI to do more of the grunge work, the reporting, the statistics, and free up more time to do the touchy-feely stuff, the sort of emotional intelligence stuff. That's kind of the point that we came up with. But I mean, I think Louise and Vivian and myself agreed that we're not using it enough in management. We're using it for specific tasks to reduce the admin overload, like putting tenders in, 50-page tender, you get a synopsis out that you read, you understand it's specific to your business. But we're not really using it in the leadership development area at all. But we'd like to engage with someone who is and maybe give us some, exposure to how we could utilize that to benefit the business and try and grow leaders more than what we're currently doing.
Thank you, Bill. Vivian, do you want to add anything, or Richard?
No, everything has been captured well. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, so, Bill.
No. Sorry, this is Sydney. So I just wanted to add something. I was not in that group. I was in group 3.
You were in the first group, yes.
Yeah. It's part of what ran through as far as our engagement is concerned, which is what I hear now coming, especially the emotional intelligence element, in that I believe that most of leadership now will not be managing on the basis of most of the technical stuff that can then be AI driven and so forth. But now your what we used to call your operational leadership or managers would then have to be people managers, which means they have to start being people-centric, which means emotional intelligence now is more important than a lot of other skills that are related to your planning, organizing, and delegating, and to name it, and so forth. So we need that emotional intelligence. We need more of your spiritual intelligence to be in and all other that then start dealing with the people, so that eventually they can then be able to create that safe space for people, because they don't know how to be dealing with people and exploiting the knowledge that relates to your neuroscience and so forth. So I think leadership now changes to people experts. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's been moving in that way for a while, but I think what's happening at the moment is making it more obvious, Tseliso, where the guys that were operational managers, even though they were promoted to be leaders of people, team leaders, they still had to be very operational and drive efficiency more than anything else. And it is becoming more about EQ, more about the human side. I also want to respond to Bill, because I've picked this up in a few of the conversations. It sounds like I'm stuck on the AI-driven leader, on Jeff Woods, but really, Bill, go and look him up, everybody. I haven't read the book. I think I want to get the book on Audible or something. But what I found is his podcast on Spotify, which I think is on the other podcast platforms as well. But he interviews leaders, and so it's people that's gone through some of his workshops, in-person workshops, and that's formed part of coaching groups, and they tell us on the podcast, they tell us how they use AI to lead better and how they use AI to make their businesses better. And in the one that I listened to earlier this week, himself, Jeff, was saying he created a version of himself 30 years into the future on AI. And he's built this person and said, in 30 years, I want to be like this. I want to be, and he's now having conversations with himself, with him 30 years into the future. And it's not because he's an AI expert. He teaches you how to do prompts properly and how to get AI to interview you, to know more about you, and to use it better. So, like I said right in the beginning, it's not leading in the time of AI. You have to use the tools, but you don't have to be the expert. And I think he's really good at setting you up to start using it, because every time I've listened to a podcast, I want to get and sit down and chat with my GPT, and I want to try stuff. Because now there's questions I want to ask GPT about my business and about worldview and about marketing and about leadership. And if you prompt correctly, the outcome, yes, I had like a 4-hour conversation with GPT on Monday afternoon. After one of his podcasts, and the outcome was just awesome, I think. Anyway, all right, so that kind of brings us to the end. We've got 3 minutes left. I want to just open the floor and ask, is there anybody who's got anything they want to close us off with, or throw back into the conversation, or anything that's come up for you, having listened to the feedback from the other rooms?
Well, from my point of view, it's definitely given me some food for thought. I would like to engage with Louise, if someone could pass me on her details, and we were discussing something in the room we'd like to take maybe a bit further. But thank you everybody for the input, and Craig, that front logo thing, I never really considered that, but it is, as you often do, you bring stuff that I think would be important. So I'll do some research around that. Thank you so much. But yeah, it was fantastic. I'm glad
I'm glad you attended, Bill. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, thank you very much for organizing this program. I shared this in a smaller group, and I think this discussion this morning has really got me thinking about going back to action and some really useful things. I share that as an organization, we are very big on the soft aspect of people management, but what I see lacking is the technical aspect. And I think that once we are able to use AI effectively, we will be able to manage better and reduce the workload and the burnout, and then focus on the soft aspects to really help us achieve our objectives. So just to say, it's been a useful discussion, and thank you all for sharing.
Well, if I may,
Yes, Samuel.
quickly jump in. And going back to that first discussion we had, I think even before the recording, about the South African way, I am worried about world's view, the fact that they are breaking my decision not to attend too many of these sessions. The topics are so interesting, I can't stay away. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. That's great to hear. Yeah. All right. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. I think one of the important things that came up again is what Louise closed us off with, is we've got to learn by doing, because it's new. Nobody's the expert yet, and we've got to get rid of the imposter syndrome, and we've got to be okay with everybody learning and everybody figuring it out. And maybe that's one of the most important aspects to teach leaders, to help them develop up to a point where they are okay with not knowing, and they make it okay for everybody that follows them to not know yet, and that we'll get there together. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye. Bye.